Translation. In executing devotional service, one has to see every living entity equally, without enmity towards anyone, yet without intimate connections with anyone. One has to observe celibacy, be grave and execute his eternal activities, offering the results to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. A devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who seriously engages in devotional service, is equal to all living entities. There are various species of living entities, but a devotee does not see the outward covering. He sees the inner soul inhabiting the body. Because each and every soul is part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he does not see any difference. That is the vision of a learned devotee. As explained in Bhagavad Gita, a devotee or a learned sage does not see any difference between a learned brahmana, a dog, an elephant, or a cow, because he knows that the body is the outer covering only, and that the soul is actually part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. A devotee has no enmity toward any living entity, but that does not mean that he mixes with everyone. That is prohibited. Aprasangata means not to be in intimate touch with everyone. A devotee is concerned with his execution of devotional service, and he should therefore mix with devotees only in order to advance his objective. He has no business mixing with others, for although he does not see anyone as his enemy, his dealings are only with persons who engage in devotional service. A devotee should observe the vow of celibacy. Celibacy does not necessitate that one be absolutely free from sex life. Satisfaction with one's wife is permitted also under the vow of celibacy. The best policy is to avoid sex life altogether. That is preferable. Otherwise, a devotee can get married under religious principles and live peacefully with a wife. A devotee should not speak needlessly. A serious devotee has no time to speak of nonsense. He is always busy in Krishna consciousness. Whenever he speaks about Krishna. Mauna means silence. Silence does not mean that one should not speak at all, but that he should not speak nonsense. He should be very enthusiastic in speaking about Krishna. Another important item described here is swadharmena, or being exclusively occupied in one's eternal occupation, which is to act as the eternal servitor of the Lord, or to act in Krishna consciousness. The next word, baliyasa, means offering the results of all activities to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A devotee does not act on his personal account for sense gratification. Whatever he earns, whatever he eats, and whatever he does, he offers for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sarvabhuta samatvena nirvairena prasangata brahmacharjena maunena swadharmena baliyasa. In executing devotional service, one has to see every living entity equally, without enmity towards anyone, yet without intimate connections with anyone. One has to observe celibacy, be grave, and execute his eternal activities, offering the results to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sarvabhuta samatvena nirvairena. The devotee has to see things in a different way than the materialist. The materialist may see so many things, but whatever he sees is based on his own enviousness towards other living entities. He sees things in relationship to other living entities only in terms of how he can enjoy or get some satisfaction from other persons who do things for him, or he may get things from them. There are, of course, other ways of dealing, but they're all based on this principle of enviousness. But a devotee has to be freed from the envious mentality. One of the ways of doing that, and it is also a symptom that it is done, is samaksarveshu bhuteshu, whereby one is seeing all living entities equally. Sarva bhuta samatvena. This means that one sees all the living entities as part and parcel of Krishna. This is not very difficult to do. Of course, there are so many things that those parts and parcels can do which can discourage one from such a vision. But still, this vision is quite possible to attain if one simply keeps in mind that the Supreme Personality of Godhead has many parts and parcels, all of them equal on the spiritual platform. We should see this equality amongst living entities. This is a symptom of the mode of goodness. Living entities as part of one spiritual truth, one overriding spiritual truth, one goodness. That is a symptom of the mode of goodness. That one will see one spiritual unification amongst all the living entities. In other words, that they're all part of the spiritual nature. So, this of course does not mean Mayavadi philosophy. One can see the spiritual principle behind the entire of the material creation. In other words, one can see how Krishna is there and all the living entities are his parts and parcels. This is a symptom of mode of goodness because, after all, goodness means knowledge, and knowledge means that at least you understand that this living entity is spirit soul and not his body. Minimum understanding of knowledge. If you don't know that you're not your body, then this is a symptom of the mode of ignorance or mode of passion. When one comes to the mode of goodness, he has to at least understand that his essential nature is that he's spirit soul. When one understands like that, then one will tend to stop seeing other living entities in a very relativistic fashion. He will see other living entities in terms of their spiritual connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this is very helpful. We say, Brahmabhuta prasanatmana sochatina sakangshati, to come to that platform of samaksarveshu bhuteshu, and thus be able to engage in devotional service of the Lord, which means to come to the platform of seeing all living entities equally. One has to be beyond this platform of hankering and lamentation. We are always busy hankering for that which we do not have, and lamenting for that which we have lost. So, hankering and lamentation are there in those who are eager for enjoying something of this body or mind. When one wishes to enjoy some symptoms of the bodily or mental sense gratification, then immediately he will be hankering for something. Because that is a desire, and all desires mean you want something. Want, hankering, these are the same words. I want this. I want that. And because we never get what we want, and we always lose it periodically, even if we have it, then one starts to lament, oh, I didn't get that, or oh, I had this, I lost that. So these two symptoms of hankering and lamentation are direct symptoms of the entanglement that the living entity feels in relationship with his body. And a lot of this hankering and lamentation has to do with our relationships with other living entities. So, if we can actually learn how to be freed from enviousness, then we can actually become freed from all this hankering and lamentation and actually see all living entities equally. However, nirvairena aprasangata, although he sees like this, the devotee should not mix with everybody, thinking that yes, they are all equal and nobody is my enemy. Therefore, I should not see difference between the living entities. Therefore, I can mix with any living entity and everything will be fine. You may think like that, but let us say the scorpion or the tiger or the piranha fish, they may not think in the same way you think. Therefore, immediately there are some categories of living entities who we should not associate with. You should avoid associating with these envious creatures who will eat you up or bite you or do something terrible. That's common sense. Similarly, we do not mix with every human being either. Just like we avoid the association of the opposite sex as much as possible. Because by avoiding this association, we develop some spiritual strength which keeps us from becoming entangled in the material world. Therefore, although we don't see on the spiritual platform a difference, we make a separation between the brahmachari ashram and the brahmacharini ashram. Because by saying there's no difference like that, is more or less a Mayavadi point of view. But even the Mayavadis don't mix the men and the women like that. Even though they're Mayavadis, they know that everything may be all one, but we're not ready for that yet. So, therefore it is not a very controversial principle that one should avoid mixing with certain parties. Even in the second class platform, Prema Maichi Kripa Upeksha, one is merciful towards the innocent class who can receive such mercy, but one gives up the association of the envious class, the demoniac class. One doesn't want to associate with such persons because they entangle one in sinful activities. Or they will reject Krishna and Krishna consciousness, Krishna's devotees. Therefore, we avoid the association of sinful persons. So, it is clear that we are not dealing with a contradiction here, but we are dealing with some very basic common sense principles. On the philosophical platform, one may see and should see, and will see if he's a little advanced, the higher nature of spiritual oneness. That we are all living entities, part and parcel of Krishna, and our business is to go back home, back to Godhead. However, we will also see some practical differences. That my body and the body of the opposite sex are quite different, that we should avoid association because the connection will create spiritual troubles. So in this way, these principles may be balanced. Then, brahmacharjena. Now, when we speak without intimate connection, the next obvious point is brahmacharjena. Tapasa brahmacharjena samena cha damena cha tyagena sochavam yamena niyamena va. The actual austerities are described herein. Tapasya. Tapasya means the various symptoms or austerities. So it begins, tapasa brahmacharjena, beginning with the austerity of brahmacharya life. No connection with the opposite sex. However, this does not mean absolute restriction, because those who get married and live under the regulated vows of grihastha ashram, they are also allowed like that. Just as the next word, maunena. Maunena doesn't necessarily mean no talking. Although if one doesn't know what to say, better he keeps his mouth shut. So, brahmacharjena refers to regulated, systematic life. Maunena means regulated talk. One will not speak nonsense. One will only speak about Krishna. That is mauna. Silence. Silence means that which is of the transcendental nature. Peaceful. Absolute silence you'll never have. There's no such thing as silence. Yeah. Or one may, of course, not talk, but to be completely silent is not possible. After all, ultimately, even if you manage to suppress all motions and other noises, still you're breathing, and that makes noise too. Nobody can be absolutely silent. Therefore, this word refers to the process of talking, and it refers to nonsense talking at that. Now someone may say, well, that's stretching the definition. Maybe. In the past, when people were not able to engage in chanting Hare Krishna, they used the meditative process. And in the meditative process, there was the symptom of quietness or silence, but still within that process, there was the chanting of the Omkara. Om. Therefore, the silence referred to not saying anything until the right time, when one would chant Om. So it is not actually stretching the point. It is rather, it is rather that the performer of the yogic practice has to know what to say. Even if one is performing strictly the meditative process, still he has to say Om at one point. So complete silence is not recommended anywhere, but rather don't talk foolishly. Don't say foolish things. Don't act in a foolish way. You will find one of the biggest destructive factors in spiritual life is prajalpa. You will find without even trying, you can fall completely in Maya by just talking about nonsense. You may be completely Krishna conscious and then start talking about something completely nonsense. And 2 minutes later, you're totally in Maya. You might have noticed that, like every day. You might have noticed that you may be very Krishna conscious, but as soon as nonsense talking starts, immediately one's consciousness dives into the pit of Maya. Because nonsense talk breeds a sound vibration, which breeds complete materialistic consciousness in the mind. Every vibration creates a sympathetic vibration amongst other things. Just like you, the living entity, when you have things, they develop kind of like the characteristic or quality of you. These things, they become just like you in a certain sense. That's why one lover takes objects of the loved one, or the objects of the child bring about emotion in the parent. There is a perceivable fact that one's vibration will bring about an identity which affects certain objects. This vibration is very powerful. So sound vibration can affect things very seriously. Just see how when we chant Hare Krishna, the vibration becomes very nice. But when we are going outside and we have to make some foray or go into the material world for accomplishing something for Krishna, how rotten it is in the material world. So, the point is that according to the vibrations that one is putting out, for instance, I want to enjoy. That's how come you know when a demon walks in the room. And immediately everything becomes disturbed and agitated. Because he's putting out the vibration, I want to be the enjoyer. I am the enjoyer and controller. Not even I want to be. I am the enjoyer. I am the controller. I am the Lord. I am the master. And if you think you're a servant of Krishna, you're a fool. This is the demon's vibration. And his sound vibration, even if he's only speaking something which could be considered to be innocent, are very harmful as well. So powerful is the sound vibration. Therefore, we use the Krishna conscious sound vibrations. We chant Hare Krishna mantra, we talk about the philosophy, or we talk about things which are in relation to Krishna's service. And these vibrations help us become strong and steady and fixed in Krishna's service. They give us purification. But if we start to pick up the vibration of something mundane, something that was previously done or thought before one was a devotee, or some mundane aspect of the material world, immediately we fall into Maya, because the mind starts to vibrate in those ways again and starts to reflect the mundane atmosphere of this material world, and one becomes overwhelmed with hankering and lamentation and desire and falls down from the platform of Krishna consciousness. Therefore, one should never talk prajalpa, especially when one is in the kitchen, when one is cooking, because then those material vibrations would go into the food that one cooks, and the whole affair is ruined, and all the devotees lose their Krishna consciousness just by eating what you cook. Therefore, there should be strict silence, no talking, which is observed with somebody with a stick in the kitchen, just to beat you over the head as soon as you start blabbing. Yeah. People, they always like to talk so much. Would you talk on the altar before the deities? No, at least we have that much sense. Similarly, one should not talk in the kitchen. Strict rule. Unless it is about this preparation or that preparation. Otherwise, get out of the kitchen. Don't talk nonsense. And also, one should never speak nonsense or talk before the deity. And also before the spiritual master. When one is before the spiritual master, he should never have a conversation with somebody else. He should not speak. There should be strict silence. Otherwise, one should only speak when spoken to. These are actually the principles of dealing with superior personalities. Don't talk before the deity. Don't talk in the temple room or the kitchen. But in the temple room we can chant Hare Krishna. May also chant while cooking. One may concentrate in different ways according to his capacity. So, the principle of sound vibration is considered to be very important in this Krishna consciousness movement. And therefore it is regulated strictly. Of course, nobody follows it because they cannot control their tongue. Tongue wants to wag like the tail of a dog, continuously going. Sometimes you may see a dog sitting on the street and his tail is just thumping all the time. Especially if there's a floor or something which is hollow underneath, and he can hear the sound, and he's going boom, 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 boom. Similarly, one's mouth has got this tail in it which is always wagging. Blah, 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 blah. You can hear it. Sometimes people get together and they just start talking all garbage immediately. Because they love to have that tongue moving like anything. So, that should be avoided strictly. And if it goes on in these places where it should not go on, those who still have some intelligence left in their head should take a stick and beat these people out. Or tell them, be quiet. No speaking. Of course, if you have some guest coming, don't be so fanatical and not like that. But amongst devotees who know better, there should not be any speaking. And this should be strictly maintained. It's like the Pujari department should strictly maintain this silence principle, both in the kitchen and in the temple room. You are authorized to take the stick and beat them when they are breaking this principle. That may be breaking a principle too, to beat devotee. But take your pick. At least show the stick. Our principle is we don't like to use the stick, but we don't mind showing it. See, look at that stick. This stick could end up on your head if you don't watch it. And in this way, maybe somebody will feel some fear. But the tongue never feels fear. The tongue will just go on talking non-stop. It doesn't feel any fear. Even at the pain of being beaten with the club, the tongue will go on talking because it just doesn't stop. It's like a machine which goes out of control. Just like when eating. It is not, you see sometimes when there's Sunday feast or something and one starts eating uncontrollably. So, it is not that he's making a plan, now I will eat like this. The tongue has got its plan, its program, fixed. So it just starts, you just start shoveling it in with a big shovel, and the tongue is just chomping away. And whenever you think, oh, maybe I'm eating too much, then the tongue gives message to the mind, no. And immediately, no. And still, eating is going on. One does not stop. So, the tongue is the most voracious. One of the Prasadam prayers says like that. Jiva fele vishaya sagare. The worst of all of these senses, most materialistic and most eager for gratification, is the tongue. In some cultures, the tongue has to be going non-stop. Otherwise, there's no happiness or satisfaction. The tongue must go on non-stop. They must have something in the mouth all day or talk all day. They're always talking, or else if they're not talking, they're eating something. Or they're smoking something, or they're chewing something. Continuously, non-stop, in some countries. But we have to be very careful not to allow the mouth just to go on like some kind of diarrhea all day. Spewing forth from the mouth all day long. Especially in the girls' department. If you don't mind. The girls' department is especially famous for the diarrhea of the mouth problem. It's just continuous, non-stop talking all the time. And obviously it has nothing to do with Krishna. Maybe sometimes just to be a little bona fide, 2 seconds worth of Krishna. And then immediately spinning off into all kinds of Maya, and then talking. And then they write letters. Why am I so disturbed? Well, we can tell you why you're so disturbed. Big mouth. Diarrhea of the mouth causes diarrhea of the brain, causes spiritual problems. Actually, practically speaking, one can always pinpoint directly the causes of problems. Those causes of problems are generally always related to talking too much at one point, not seriously hearing and chanting, or eating too much. Somehow the tongue is involved in Maya. Somehow, always. Whenever somebody's involved in Maya, somehow the tongue is involved. It seems to be the rule. Therefore, maunena. Watch what you say. Of course, also watch what you eat. Just eat prasadam. And be careful not to take too much. And swadharmena. Baliyasa. One should always engage in devotional service according to his capacity or occupation, capability, and offer the result always to the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Always engage in one's service as he is authorized or as he is qualified. And he should always offer that result to Krishna, because that is actually the service, the offering to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So one should try and offer to Krishna all those things which we can understand in our intelligence. Offer to Krishna that which we say, offer to Krishna that which we do, offer to Krishna our entire lives. This is actually intelligence. Spiritual intelligence means control the senses, beginning with the tongue, very carefully. Control the mind. Do not allow it to ramble on uncontrollably. Control the activities of the body so that there is not unrestricted action. And develop spiritual knowledge and vision so that one can factually understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead in truth and control one's desire by always wishing to satisfy the Supreme Lord. If you just want that, everything else will be taken care of. If you just want to satisfy Krishna, automatically you won't speak nonsense. Especially in those areas which are directly related to the Supreme Lord, like in the altar or in the kitchen or before spiritual master. Automatically one will be controlled. Yeah? Because one will have a desire to please Krishna, and automatically those things which we know will be displeasing to Krishna are automatically curtailed. We give them up. So, this Krishna consciousness philosophy gives us a protection from these very dangerous pitfalls. Now we must actually take up this philosophy, take up this understanding, and avoid contact with the objects of the senses, which will bring us into a very bad situation. We can have contact with objects of senses, but those which bring us into a bad situation should be avoided. For instance, we may see things, smell things, hear things, touch things, taste things, and this may all be part of Krishna's service, but we should avoid those things which will bring us downwards, bring us to lose connection with the spiritual energy, will help us lose connection with Krishna. Those things should be avoided like anything. So always remember Krishna, never forget Him. Always act for the satisfaction of Krishna, and don't act for personal sense gratification. And one who does like this will be able to conquer over the stringent laws of the material nature. This is the surrendering process. This is actually the surrendering process. That one will control the mind and the senses for the satisfaction of Krishna, because he will utilize his mind and senses in doing something which the Supreme Lord wishes to be done. And then perfection will come. So we should very carefully understand these points and engage ourselves in devotional service with love and devotion. And in this way, things will work out very nicely. Hare Krishna.